Hello, this is how to overcome your fears using the Navy SEALs games approach. And please be forewarned, if you study the brain, please look away now. I'm only providing a simple overview. This research was actually compiled by Paul Moran. So, we all have fears. It's part of the reality of being human. The following comments are based on Paul Moran's research and work with elite business people, athletes, performers, and the Navy SEALs, Special Forces members. As we know, fears can stop you dead in your tracks, quite literally. This is due to how the brain functions, and sometimes this reality really works to our benefit, particularly in the area of physical safety. When you're confronted with a scary situation, in basic terms, your brain presses the panic button. The danger is perceived by your senses, then makes its way over to its region called the amygdala. I think that's how you pronounce it. One of the regions of the brain that deals with emotions, where if the danger is perceived to be real and imminent, the brain starts a cascade effect of panic responses. Your heart beats faster, you breathe faster, blood pressure rises. If the level of panic is sufficient, chemicals such as adrenaline and cortisol are released into your bloodstream. Again, I'm not a doctor. The fight or flight system is thus activated and you're in full panic mode, like it or not. Unless the frontal lobes of the cerebral cortex can get the amygdala's panic cascade under control or prevent it from occurring in the first place, the likelihood of pushing through your fears is quite limited. The problem is that research has shown that the sensory data arrives way more quickly to the amygdala than it does to the frontal lobes. Again, frontal lobes where rational thought could potentially prevent the fear reaction from cascading out of control. So, Navy SEAL researchers came to the realization that they were losing a large number of potential SEALs from the training process due to one simple fact. They could not get their fear response under control. This inability to control the fear response was most apparent in what's called the underwater pool competency test. This is the test where Navy SEAL candidates spend as much as 20 minutes underwater, full scuba equipment, during which time they're constantly harassed by instructors. The instructors will turn off their regulators, they'll tie their breathing gear into knots, and generally make it difficult to breathe from the scuba tank. And this, for anything more than a short period of time, so they're still breathing. This harassment leads to a steadily worsening mental and physical condition, and the candidates must do everything they can to resist the desire to surface for air. So it's an incredibly strong desire that is extraordinarily difficult to suppress. The human brain has been hardwired to understand that breathing is, absolutely fundamental, that we cannot breathe underwater, and without oxygen for any prolonged period, we're done, we're dead. So, realizing that the amygdala pushes the panic button, and further realizing that the only way to overcome this automatic response would be to get the cortex, the frontal lobes involved, the SEAL commanders came to the conclusion that it was absolutely important to be proactive and condition a non-panic response by repeated exposure to the right emergency procedures. What it boils down to is that the cortex, frontal lobes cannot get involved real time before the amygdala at the moment the danger is perceived, as they receive the sensory input more slowly. So the response needs to be really conditioned based on practice before any event could induce panic. The candidates need to override their panic system based on previously obtained and internalized knowledge and a set of step-by-step procedures and techniques. So, all that being said, let's work through the procedure. And while there are more, SEAL instructors decided to focus on what they call, these big 5 within the games technique. Games, goals, mental rehearsal, self-talk and arousal control, and there's a 5th called endurance. So they're reordered a bit to come up with the idea of games, but you get the general gist. This is an approach to conquer your fears. So let's start with G for goals, goal setting. This involves creating very short-term and achievable goals so that you are not overwhelmed by a bunch of extra thoughts and concerns and you can remain focused on the task at hand. So for example, in the case of the underwater pool competency test, when you were underwater, the instructor tangled your breathing apparatus, so on and so forth, you wouldn't think to yourself, I wonder what he's going to do to me next, or I'm not sure how much more of this I can take, or I wonder how the candidate next to me is doing. The approach with the goals is rather you would say to yourself simply, my goal is to untangle these knots, nothing more and nothing less. You would then say to yourself, I will employ the knot untangling procedure we learned in training step by step. Then you would execute step 1, step 2, etc. In other words, you would block out all extraneous thoughts and factors and focus totally on the task at hand, step by step. Can you see how you could use the same approach with any fears you may have in business, sports, or life? Next is arousal control. This is somatic awareness, being in the body. This element focuses mainly on breathing. So taking deeper breaths with longer exhales stimulates the body's relaxation response and helps to mitigate some of the effects that the amygdala's panic response can create. So in the pool competency example, when the instructor tied your hoses or pulled your mask off, rather than immediately starting to try to breathe rapidly, you should sense where the stress is occurring in the body. Name it. It's very important. Spot and name it in the body. And proceed with inner and outer, deeper controlled breathing. Pretty straightforward. Next is mental rehearsal, M. Often referred to as visualizations, imagery. Mental rehearsal involves running through in your mind whatever it is you are trying to accomplish, envisioning all the steps, then a calm reaction to any stress, and ultimately a successful outcome. Mental rehearsal is seeing yourself doing it over and over again successfully, as if, in a movie. You can visualize the scenario from a first-person perspective, where you are seeing it through your eyes as you perform the actions, or from a third-person perspective, where it's as if you are seeing it through the eyes of someone else who is watching you perform the task successfully. You should visualize the scenario in as much detail as possible, so it looks and feels as realistic as possible. There's a great deal of research out there that indicates that your mind has a hard time differentiating between a scenario vividly visualized and one that actually occurred. I work in imagery, so I buy this. I love it. As one SEAL psychologist says, by performing this step of mental rehearsal, the first time you do something in real life, and as far as your mind is concerned, it won't be like the first time at all, and you may have greater success controlling the panic reaction that typically would occur. So while the process of mental rehearsal has been of great assistance in enhancing SEAL performance, you can also see how doing this can help you perform better in all your endeavors, really. Anything from minute from a PowerPoint presentation to playing music on stage. Endurance. So, being proactive approach to mastering the fears is not something that will happen quickly. This is endurance. It is a war of attrition against your amygdala's fear response. You will have to have a great deal of endurance and determination as you do as many iterations as necessary to conquer your fear responses in your particular endeavor. You will need to commit to it as long as it's necessary, bravely confronting, conquering your fears head on, knowing that by doing so, you will greatly increase the probability of achieving greatness in your chosen endeavor. Your mantra should be, as long as it takes, as many times as it takes. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Commit ahead of time. Be brave. Do not give up until you conquer your fears and reach your objectives. So, go hard. In for a penny, in for a pound. Self-talk. S. As has been discussed and proven in many other contexts, the Navy SEAL commanders came to the realization that in becoming an effective Special Forces team member, what you say to yourself, particularly in times of stress, is very important. You can say as many as thousands of words to yourself in a minute, but at a minimum, you are likely to say several hundred words. If you're filling your mind with negative thoughts, you don't increase your chances of success. Instead, you increase your probability of failure. Discipline yourself to focus on positive self-talk. Repeat encouraging phrases to yourself. Find specific phrases or words that are particularly calming for you or particularly motivating for you. Use them constantly to prepare for various scenarios and use them during scenarios that occur in the heat of the battle. Be your own best fan. Be your own cheering section. Prove by yourself talk that you can believe in yourself and in the probability that you will succeed. This will help you keep the stress response under control, and it will help you succeed in every aspect of your life. So, there you have it in a nutshell. The games approach to overcoming fears and achieving your goals and greatness in all areas of your life. Don't limit yourself to one or two of the elements of the approach. Go through it systematically. Use all 5. Use them proactively and use them together in concert. Some fear responses are so strong they will overwhelm anything, but a coordinated effort to make sure that your rational cortex wins out over your emotional, panic-prone amygdala in the effort to control the fear response and increase the probability that you will accomplish your objectives and become great in your chosen endeavors. You need all these reinforcements and coordination, basically everything you can get. So good luck with the fear.